everyone, happy Saturday. So this is starting the series for gut health. So thank you for listening. I apologize for the delay in getting this video out due to a change in my work schedule. So I appreciate your patience. This is a super complex topic, and it's becoming more complex the more we learn about it. It's basically the unpeeling of the onion when it comes to the GI tract. So the wellness in 2 words phrase that I'm focusing on is get dirty, where we understand that we're supposed to coexist with our environment and understand that that's also kind of predicated on the assumption that we have a healthy environment, which we don't. We have a highly toxic environment on our planet right now. But what are ways that you can do to kind of promote your gut health so that you can improve your body's detoxification, improve what you're getting from your food? And that's the whole point of this little topic. Bacteria are good. We're meant to live with bacteria. So when I say get dirty, that means don't stress about a sanitary life or a sanitary environment, because it's never going to happen. You're never going to be without germs or bacteria. And I guess when I say germs implies something bad. Let's say microbes. You're never going to be without microbes. Tiny little things, microscopic, they're everywhere. Okay, what you want is to have harmony with your microbes. You want to have healthy microbes that keep you healthy, which is kind of like a mutualism in relationship where both people benefit, well, not people, but both organisms benefit from the arrangement, right? Versus a parasitic relationship where one organism suffers at the expense of the other. So anyway, I digress. So think about, when we talk about a microbiome, they're really meaning your population of bacteria plus the genome, which is the DNA that is also involved, and the DNA that gets expressed into RNA, which makes proteins, which ultimately has the ultimate effect. So when we say microbiome, you have your microbiome, which is your total bacterial load of your body plus all of its genetic material. So I'm saying microbiome, I'm focusing mainly right now on the gut, because that's where the majority of influence for your body happens, I guess. We know that, they say that your immune system, 80% of it resides in your gut, and that's actually true. We know now that the longest nerve in the body, the vagus nerve, which that's not a surprise, but when you think about it as an information freeway or a bat phone to your brain, well, then they're now even referring to the gut as a first brain, not a second brain. So what's primarily in your gut? Bacteria and food. So if we're getting all this information transfer between your intestinal tract and your brain, then obviously it's a very critical system. So when we say, the microbiome, we're largely talking about the GI tract population of bacteria and what their influence is in terms of your health and your neurotransmitters, immune system. There's so many things that are involved. So, okay. Let's see. So the simplest definition of your intestinal tract is to digest food and break it down into parts that your body can use for energy. Now, we're not plants. We don't have chlorophyll. We can't take sunlight, the electrons in sunlight, to make food. We actually do the opposite. We take food and make it into electrons. And that all happens within the bacteria's mitochondria and within your body's cell mitochondria. It's basically the energy factory, if you will. So food is vital, food is important, we know that. The quality of your food and the nutrient density of your food is important. But when you're eating certain foods, you're actually selecting for certain bacteria, and those are going to have benefits to you. There's a lot of, it's just so complicated. There's a lot that goes down in breaking down your food. You can take certain things, you can take your fat, you can take your proteins, you can take your carbohydrates, and you break them down. You take complex carbohydrates and break down the fiber. But it's not the fiber, the insoluble fiber, that gets broken down. What happens is your body takes that and actually converts it essentially into fat. But it can't do it on its own. It does it with the help of bacteria. And that's where they're vital and magical. Let's see. So you've heard the term leaky gut. The term leaky gut kind of refers to when there's so much inflammation that your intestinal system is not working correctly. So there are a lot of terms I'm going to start kind of educating you on that are they're out there, and you may not understand exactly what the term is, and when you look up the actual definition, it helps you kind of understand why we use those terms. So leaky gut, I kind of use this analogy of a cinder block wall, because that's to oversimplify it, but you have a cinder block wall, and in between you have all these junctions where nothing's getting through. It's impermeable, right? So your colon, your small intestine, all of that, that's all lined with a one cell layer of this cinder block, if you will. And in certain places you have what's called tight junctions, which is basically the mortar between the cinder blocks where nothing's going to get through. When you have an inflamed gut, you have all this mortar breakdown. These tight junctions start to fail. Gluten is notorious for some people for causing inflammation through the process of making what's called zonulin, which then causes the breakdown of these tight junctions. When you have these gaps then between the cinder block, you have stuff that gets into your bloodstream that your body should have never seen. And then they become potential allergens. They can cause food allergies and such, or can cause downstream effects. Not really a food allergy, but your body confuses it for something that it shouldn't be, and then it attacks your own tissue because it looks kind of like it. Classic case is Hashimoto's, thyroiditis. We know that that comes from inflammation in the gut, stuff that shouldn't be happening in the first place. So one of the ways to protect against leaky gut is to have a healthy microbiome so that you decrease inflammation through the entire intestinal tract. Because that one cell layer, when it fails, causes a whole host of problems down the road. And that cell layer is constantly regenerating, because I think it's every 3 to 5 days, that regenerates, because those skin cells slough off every time you pass digestive matter through your GI tract. So, I mean, when you think about the fact that your poop, your human stool, is, when you subtract out the water weight of it, it's like 75% water. But when you take the dry weight of it, almost a third to a half of it is just bacteria alone. The rest of it's fiber and skin cells. So you're like, that's really a lot of bacteria, number one, and they exist there for a reason. They make things like vitamin K, they make neurotransmitters like serotonin, the building blocks for serotonin, which help you feel well. That's why when you eat a big meal and you feel satisfied, your parasympathetic system's kind of going, you feel calm and rested. A lot of that is serotonin influence. So they're really important. See, it's so complicated, I don't even know which direction to go now, so I'm trying to stay on track but not give you more information than we need to for part to part. So when we've talked about keto, we've talked about complex carbohydrates, we talked about resistant starches, why they're important. It's because they are fuel for your downstream bacteria. So your healthy bacteria in your gut will break that down into short chain fatty acids, which then actually nourish your colon cells, they nourish your small intestine cells. A lot of those short chain fatty acids from the breakdown of fiber by the bacteria in your gut actually stay in that area and keep your gut skin cells healthy, which is really important. It's been shown that it actually can reduce the likelihood of colon cancer. And we know that fiber and decreased colon cancer rates were linked, but a lot of it is linked to having a good diverse microbiome, the right bacteria that you're feeding that are actually nourishing those cells. They kind of need to exist together. Let's see. And that's all through the process of fermentation. So when we talk about eating fermented foods, when we say get dirty, eat fermented foods, don't worry about germs and all that kind of stuff, I mean, fermentation's been around in cultures for a very long time. There's lots of foods that involves fermentation. There's yogurt, there's kombucha, there's kimchi, there's sauerkraut. I mean, when you look at every culture, in terms of just their ancestry and their heritage, every culture has a fermented food. It was what we had to do before we had refrigeration. It was a way to actually preserve food. Because what happens is you create a different pH, a higher acid content. Often there's some salt added for whichever bacteria can exist in those conditions. And so doing that, I mean, not too much, obviously, because it can be toxic to the bacteria, but doing that actually helps preserve the food. And those bacteria break down the fiber and the materials that are there in that food to create substances that will nourish your downstream bacteria that are already in your colon. So when you do something like kombucha or sauerkraut or whatever, it's already kind of like pre-digested by the bacteria. So those bacteria probably won't survive your stomach and your acid, but what they created is what feeds the downstream bacteria, which is why fermented foods are of benefit. So let's see. So why do we want bacteria? Why do we want to be dirty? Why do we want to have all these bacteria kind of in our life? Because A, we'll never be rid of them. B, they actually help our immune system know what's in the world and what's healthy exposure versus not. So we're finding now that autoimmune disease, allergies, asthma, eczema, a lot of those are more prevalent in a more sanitary environment. So when we were kids, we played with mud pies, we did all kinds of stuff. I have to confess, when my kids come inside to eat dinner, I don't often make them wash their hands. The only time we ever really consistently, I'm like, you need to wash your hands, is after you use the bathroom, because that's a sanitation issue. But otherwise, most of the time, I'm not like on them all the time to wash their hands. We didn't use sanitizer a lot. Studies are now showing if you have pets in the home from a young age, that kids fare better because they're exposed to germs from the pets, pet dander, all these other potential things in a non-sterile type environment actually help your body know, hey, this stuff's normal. It's not anything to be worried about. We don't have to overreact. We can calm down. Having gut health diversity is also one of those things that's important for that. Because when your body's seeing a lot of different bacteria, they don't cross-react to things that kind of look similar because they're not interpreted as foreign. So your body can actually stay pretty calm. Let's see. So I want to make sure we're on track. So ways that you can keep a healthy microbiome: minimize your use of antibiotics. A lot of times when you're eating the right foods and you have low inflammation in your body, you will have fewer allergies, which means fewer sinus infections, which means fewer respiratory infections. When you have an immune system that's primed for only the intruders and the right things, it's not an exhausted immune system, and therefore it's going to be able to keep the right things in check. So when you minimize your antibiotic use by keeping a lot of healthy bacteria there, because a lot of antibiotic classes don't discriminate between healthy bacteria and bad bacteria. They just, it's like wipes them all out. The broad spectrum ones especially. We try to have some that are tailored, but we're running out of antibiotics. There haven't been a lot of new antibiotics in quite some time. So the more broad spectrum it is, the more harm it does to your microbiome, and then those bacteria have to recover, and even bad ones can get a foothold in your GI tract, and then you have bad downstream consequences. So minimizing your use of antibiotics is important. Having non-chlorinated water, so drinking filtered water is important, because we know that chlorinated water actually decreases your bacterial load as well. So you don't want to ingest highly, our water supply is treated for a reason, but just take your water supply and then from your tap and filter it, because then you can filter out things like the chlorine that can cause problems in terms of your bacterial population in your GI tract. Artificial sweeteners, different things like aspartame have been found. Aspartame and others have been found to be toxic to your microbiome. Even triclosan, which was a big component in hand sanitizer and toothpaste, has been banned because of various other reasons, but it is also toxic to bacteria. That's why it was in the sanitizers and toothpaste to begin with. Let's see. So we're going to go into each of these topics separately, but I just wanted you to get kind of the landscape of why your GI microbiome is so important. It controls your immune function. It helps you digest food properly and break it down so that you don't get potential allergens. It helps your body figure out what's friendly and what's not. It helps with the actual health of your intestinal tract, the colon itself. It nourishes them. So there's so many factors involved, and again, we're going to expound on those later. So take a deep breath. I want to make sure I'm giving you good information, and that's why it's a little hard to just put it all in one video. So tomorrow, well, not tomorrow, probably because I have to work tomorrow, but on Monday, we're going to be talking about your GI tract by design, top to bottom. What starts in your mouth, esophagus, stomach, small intestine, colon, not all the extra organs like the gallbladder and all that stuff that gets a little nutty, but just when you go from end to end, why it's there by design and what happens in each one of those microenvironments and how you can optimize your health for that. Because I use essential oils, I take supplements, I do different things. You know, sometimes if you're not getting what you need out of your food because maybe your microbiome's impaired, then you need to use digestive enzymes. If you need to do a probiotic, there are great probiotic choices out there, but you kind of need to know what you're looking for in a probiotic. So we're going to talk about all those things and, you know, maybe why proton pump inhibitors are not the best choice for you for stomach issues. Changing other things may get you to the point you can minimize your use of them because you actually need stomach acid. It keeps the bad bacteria down. It keeps pathogens out. It also helps you digest your food for everything downstream. So, you know, having a neutral pH in your stomach is not normal. That's not what we were intended to have long term. So ways that you can rehab your whole intestinal tract that can actually help you optimize your digestion and create a healthy microenvironment in your intestinal tract is kind of the goal of this whole series, if that makes any sense. So anyway, happy Saturday. Thanks for listening, and we'll roll up our sleeves and get more in detail on Monday. All right, thank you for listening. And don't forget, share and subscribe if you find this interesting. If you find it helpful, we'll get more practical on Monday, okay? Thanks.